will start at Independence Stadium, making its way to the Heroes Acre, where the burial service will start, and we will the NBC will broadcast all the proceedings live, starting now up until the end of the service.
Well, of course, at this juncture, we also would like to welcome our viewers that are joining us all across sub-Saharan Africa on our DSTV platform. Don't forget to, of course, also tune in on our radio services that's across the DSTV platforms as well, on DSTV audio, as well as on our terrestrial channels here in the country. All language services are carrying this broadcast, and as well as our digital platforms. That's on NBC Digital News, on YouTube, as well as on the Facebook platforms as well. But we know yesterday was the memorial of the late President GEINGOB. But I want us to just track back to that fateful day of the 4th of February, exactly 3 weeks ago today, when the Vice President of the Republic of Namibia, very, very early in the morning, of course, had to make that announcement to the nation of the passing of the late head of state. Let's quickly take a look at this.
Announcement of the death of His Excellency Dr. HAGE GEINGOB, President of the Republic of Namibia, 4th February 2024. Fellow Namibians, announcement of the death of His Excellency Dr. HAGE GEINGOB, President of the Republic of Namibia, 4th February 2024. Fellow Namibians, it is with utmost sadness and regret that I inform you that our beloved Dr. HAGE GEINGOB, the President of the Republic of Namibia, has passed on today, Sunday, 4 February 2024, at about 00 hours 04 at Lady Pohamba Hospital, while he was receiving medical treatment by his medical team. At his side was his dear wife, Madam Monica Gainkos, and their children. The medical team, as I informed the nation only yesterday, has been trying its utmost best to ensure that our president recovers. Regrettably, notwithstanding the team's spirited effort to save his life, sadly, fellow Namibians, he passed on. The Namibian nation has lost a distinguished servant of the people, a liberation struggle icon, the chief architect of our constitution, and the pillar of the Namibian House. At this moment of deepest sorrow, I appeal to the nation to remain calm and collected, while the government attends to all necessary state arrangements, preparations, and other protocols. Further announcement in this regard will be made, while keeping the President's bereaved family and you, dear fellow Namibians, in our thoughts and prayers.
Well, of course, that was the Vice President then, Dr. Nangolo Mbumba, bringing us that announcement of the passing of the President. Initially, of course, with some chatterings going around some of the social media platforms, many thought it was a hoax up until that announcement came. Now, for most of us that are, of course, in the media industry, we understand in the background what happens before an announcement like that takes place. But for many Namibians, of course, you just wake up to the announcement. But Blanche, we know, of course, that you are assigned to the President's office. You have covered him for over 9 years. And unfortunately, on that fateful day, that morning, you were responsible for putting that announcement together as well. Can you just walk us through how the news reached you and how we got to that particular announcement?
The announcement. Yes, Ricardo, I do agree with you when you said that most of us in the media space, well, we are the first to get the information, but processing the information is quite difficult. But at that very moment, I feel like it's the greatest test of your journalistic skills. And what happened on that day, Ricardo, is that I got the call at around 2:30 a.m. on 4th February as the president announced that we had to rush to the old State House to record an urgent message. That's how it came through. And without thinking, I just called the camera operator on standby, Rauna. So you can imagine two women rushing to the old State House. And when we got there, we didn't even think, because I could tell from the facial expression of Dr. Bumba that, okay, this really had to be an urgent and a message that will have to go out at that moment. So that sort of also guided me and the camera operator, Rauna. So we recorded the message, came back to the office and I remember I informed the HOD of News and Current Affairs, Mr. Peter Denk, and he was in Rehoboth, and he just guided me over the phone and said, start editing and start doing what you need to do. He will join us shortly, and that is just what happened. We edited and sent the message to the video to FCC for FCC to broadcast, and I remember, if my memory serves me well, Ricardo, we went on air around 3:15. So that's when we put on the then Vice President's message that he made in his capacity then as the acting president. So that was it. And
just listening to that time span, it's like 45 minutes from the initial phone call to the actual airing. Things moving so quickly during that time.
Things moving so quickly, and hence I described it as it's the greatest. It was, for me, it was the greatest test of my career. And I think as a national broadcaster, we did keep the Namibian nation, because remember, the president said in his message that he actually appealed for calm. And as a national broadcaster, I feel like we really helped Namibians to go through the process, because as we were playing the insert,
revered continentally as an elder statesman sent his message. He had this exclusive conversation with Denver Kisting about a day ago.
And Denver, Ricardo, just to also mention before we play the insert, is that last year, April 2023, when the late President GEINGOB was in South Africa for the state visit, him and former President Becky, they had almost 5-hour-long meeting, and we, as the media, we waited to have a glimpse of the proceedings, or not just proceedings, but to have a glimpse of what they were talking about. Yeah. To our surprise, the two statesmen came out and just said, we were just catching up. We
for
had
5
a lot
hours.
to catch up. That's what the late President GEINGOB and President Becky said. And I double-checked that question, and my question, I said, really, for 5 hours, just like you? And then you see, and that's why they had that solid friendship. And Dr. GEINGOB mentioned with the tongue in cheek that, no, he was advising me on something important, but nonetheless, we were just catching up. So hence his reaction during that exclusive interview with Denver on the passing of Dr. GEINGOB.
Thabo Mbeki served as South Africa's second president from June 1999 to September 2008. Prior to that, he was Nelson Mandela's deputy president from 1994 to 1999. The late President Hage GEINGOB hailed former South African President Thabo Mbeki as a transformational leader whose talents are still required in Africa and must be allocated duties to benefit the region. I'm now joined by South Africa's former President, Thabo Mbeki, on the death of President GEINGOB. Greetings, Mr. Mbeki.
Thanks a lot, and greetings to you too.
Mr. President, you have known the late President GEINGOB from your exile years in Zambia. How would you describe your relationship?
Yes, no, you are quite correct. We were together with the late President, Dr. Hage GEINGOB, in Lusaka for many years, throughout the years that he was in Lusaka. In fact, he arrived in Lusaka after I got there. Well, you must remember that the ANC and SWAPO, these were allies. These were two comradely parties. And therefore always work together, always together all of the time. So all the time that when Hage was in Lusaka, you remember he was a principal of the Namibia Institute.
Yes.
This was the principal task that he had, was to lead that. It's a very important process in terms of preparing the cadres that would have to manage Namibia once Namibia got its independence. I'm saying a very, very important cadre development process that he was responsible for. But we were all of us together in Lusaka. And because of the relations between the ANC and SWAPO, of course, all the time we're interacting. We're interacting, discussing the challenges facing the struggle in the region, in our two countries in the region. On the African continent, what we do in terms of together, what we do in our approaches towards the OAU, questions like that. But as I say, that his own principal preoccupation was the leadership of the Institute.
Is there any specific memory that stands out from your time together in Lusaka?
Oh, no, but I mean, we were together all the time. I mean, we're together all the time with Hage, with other comrades of SWAPO. No, I wouldn't say there's anything about any day or any moment that stands out. It's because, as I said, we're continuously in contact, continuously sharing experiences in a sense, and in a sense strategizing together about what needed to be done. Because as you would remember, at this time also you had the informal organization of the frontline states, and so they would meet to discuss the region, and therefore even the individual struggles. So even for us, liberation movements, therefore it was quite obvious that we would also communicate among one another. And I'm saying SWAPO, Comrade Hage. Comrade Hage was a very senior comrade in Lusaka. And you remember, of course, after the independence of Angola, a lot of comrades, SWAPO comrades, went to Angola correctly in terms to lead the struggle from there. So Comrade Hage in Lusaka remained one of the most senior people, and therefore naturally, we had to deal with him and communicate with him on that regular basis. But as I'm trying to say to you that you must bear in mind that what Comrade HAGE was doing, as directed by SWAPO, was to lead the Namibia Institute. So it was not as though he was engaged in the daily struggles like everybody else. His daily struggle was the Institute. But because of his seniority in SWAPO, we would engage with him not about the Institute, engage with him about the broader issues that have got to do with this struggle.
Thank you for those very important insights. Now, speaking about strategizing together, not only were you comrades, but you also shared very similar political ideas relating to specifically Pan-Africanism. You believed in an Africa that is to become self-sufficient and to take good care of her people. Do you believe that as a continent, we are honoring those ambitions, those ideals, and moving in the right direction?
The last time I saw the Comrade President HAGE was a few months ago, towards the end of last year. That was when he paid a state visit to South Africa, and then decided at the end of that visit, he decided to stay a day extra in order to have an engagement with the leadership of the ANC as a leader of SWAPO, as president of SWAPO. And so I met him then. We had just a one-on-one meeting, the two of us. And indeed, the matter that you are raising, the issue that he was raising was where is the continent now? What are the challenges we are facing? But in particular, the state of our region. And in the context of the region, you've got the former liberation movements that continue to be in government in Namibia, in South Africa, in Tanzania, and in Angola, Frelimo, Mozambique, etc. These organizations continue to cooperate. And he was very keen that they must then look very objectively at the challenges they were facing and the challenges that our region faces, so that this region of Southern Africa plays its proper role in terms of the leadership of the African continent, in terms of helping Africa to realize its objectives. That's why he stayed a day extra in order to raise this one particular matter with his comrades in the leadership of the ANC. He did meet with the leadership of the ANC, and in fact, he addressed the National Executive Committee of the ANC because it was meeting at the time. But his central point, the central point he was making, was that there were certain things that are very, very important about that. Us as former liberation movements, the unity of the continent, the renaissance of the continent, excuse me, the changing for the better the lives of this 1.5 billion Africans. These were important challenges, questions of peace and stability, questions of democracy, all of these very important questions, and that the former liberation movements in Southern Africa needed to make sure that they themselves sorted out their own houses in order to be able to play this positive role with regard to the rest of the continent.
Mr. President?
So yes, sir.
Did you share President GEINGOB's concerns, particularly as far as the region is concerned?
Yes, we agreed. We agreed. I mean, in matters he was saying in particular, the former liberation movements that are still in government in our region, that are cooperating, they are meeting on a regular basis, and they've got a common political school in Tanzania and all of that, that we needed to look at each one of us to say, are we attending to these organizations? Are they strong enough? Are they meeting the challenges? Are they strong enough and capable of acting together in terms of contributing to addressing these African challenges? So no, we agreed. I agreed very much with this analysis, and I was very, very glad that he had decided to approach the ANC to say he needs to raise these matters with the leadership of the ANC so that the two organizations to start with would be of the same mind and then to start from the same position. Then they would approach the others in the region to say, let's get together and look at these specific matters. What is our own situations in each one of our countries, in each one of our movements? And what are we doing together? Is the thing that we are doing together, is it correct? Are we capable of making this contribution to these African challenges of unity, of renaissance, of peace, of democratization, of development, and so on? These are the particular things he was very concerned about, and I agreed with him. I agreed with him entirely.
Against the backdrop of his concerns that you concurred with, what impact do you believe his death will have on the region, but also on the continent, if we consider and have due regard to Pan-Africanism and its ideals?
Well, the first thing really I should have said is that I'd really tried to convey my own very, very sincere, very heartfelt condolences to the GEINGOB family, to his dear wife, Monica Gengos, to the SWAPO party, to the government, to the people of Namibia, because we have all of us, we have lost a very important person, a very important revolutionary in him. And that's why in the context of the question you are asking, it was for me, I felt immediately, then I got the news that Comrade HAGE had passed away, that there would be an immediate void. An immediate void, because even in the context of my own work, I'm no longer in government, but even the African Union would give me certain work to do and so on, and other African countries, the government would approach me to say, please do this. I would always try and keep in contact with him. Because I know I knew his commitment, the strength of his commitment to Pan-Africanism and his readiness to make sure that given the positions in which he was in as leader of President of SWAPO, President of the Republic, that he makes sure that he plays the correct role with regard to these African challenges. So I'm saying his departure is definitely has created a void, because it's not everybody, unfortunately. It's not all of our leaders who've got the same enthusiasm, the same commitment to this particular task, that we have a common responsibility not only to our countries and peoples as leaders of these liberation movements, but also a commitment to the rest of the continent and rest of the African peoples. I'm saying that it's not many among our leaders who share that kind of commitment as HAGE did. So his departure, I think, is definitely going to create a bit of a vacuum with regard to the kind of intervention he was talking about, that we must ourselves as the region prepare ourselves so that we are able to make a positive intervention in terms of addressing these challenges on the continent. That kind of leadership, I think, will be greatly weakened by his absence.
Mr. President, were you aware that he had not been well of late? You did share with us earlier that you met with him last year when he was in neighboring South Africa and you had the one-on-one with him.
He didn't say anything at all about his state of health at all. And frankly, I didn't, when I sat with him for many hours, I didn't sense there was anything wrong with him at all. I only got to hear about this challenge of cancer when there was a public announcement that he did have cancer and he was going to go to the United States for treatment and so on. And that was the first time I got to know of this state of health. But when we met, he didn't raise it, and it didn't look ill at all. He looked very healthy. And as I said, he said nothing of any kind about the state of health.
So it must have come as a very big shock to you, the initial news about his health and the subsequent news about his death.
Yes, I mean, really, it's the death. I was unhappy. Cancer is a very dangerous thing. It takes people's lives. So when I heard the news that So he was suffering from cancer. He was going to the States. I was very glad that it seemed that there were people very ready to treat him with regard to this matter. That was worrying in itself. But of course, the matter of his passing away is a complete surprise, really a complete surprise. And it was hard to believe when they said HAGE has passed away. I said, no, but how does that happen? Because it's not long ago that the announcement was made that he's suffering from cancer. Anyway, the announcement of the passing away really came as a big surprise and with a lot of shock. We're losing a very important African leader at a time when in my view, and he agreed with it, we agreed on this. There's great leadership on our continent for the kind of quality of leadership that HAGE GEINGOB was. Because in many instances, I think the continent needs stronger leadership. I think if you look around, if you look at the war, for instance, in Sudan, look at what the war in Sudan has now been going for months and months and months, and it's not clear what kind of role the African Union is playing to resolve that issue. You have the kind of conflict, that there is in West Africa, as a result of which you get these three countries, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, who say that they are leaving ECOWAS. There are things like that. The confrontation currently between Somalia and Ethiopia, because Ethiopia has got some agreement with Somaliland. So there are a number of things that are very worrying about what's happening to the continent. And I'm saying that...
Mr. President, you've spoken...
There's never been a moment when the continent needs the strong leadership than now. And it's very, very, very unfortunate that HAGE departs at this particular time.
You spoke to us about President GEINGOB's impact on the continent and his impact on the region. As a neighbor, what do you believe was his most significant impact on Namibia and her people?
Of course, I mean, Namibia is a very, very close neighbor. Personally, I mean, I've always been very keen to watch and see whatever we could do in terms of cooperation, so that we impact on the development of both countries. So I was really very pleased because you remember Comrade HAGE was very instrumental in terms of the transitional processes in Namibia. And it became first prime minister, very instrumental in terms of fashioning the kind of constitution that Namibia would have. So the matter of practically what do we do in order to ensure the development of Namibia? This one matter was very close to his heart and very, very committed to that. And it did seem to me that Namibia was making progress. I'm not saying that there were no challenges. And when I heard the news about the discovery of these oil and gas deposits, I was very glad that we had in the position of leadership, Comrade HAGE GEINGOB there, because it seemed to me that an experienced, tried and tested revolutionary like him, he would have the capacity to lead the Namibian people to handle that resource. Because, in many instances, when you have that big resource, it brings benefits, but it also produces many negative consequences. But I was saying that I was very glad that we had Comrade HAGE there in the leadership of Namibia, as Namibia was making these important discoveries, because they need proper principled revolutionary management to make sure that those resources are used to the best in the interest of the people and don't produce, as I say, negative consequences. Because I think, to be honest, I followed a little bit the negative story, which I first picked it up from Al Jazeera, about the fisheries,
Yes,
corruption and allegations of corruption around the matters of fishing and licensing and all of that. That problem would get multiplied once you have to deal with oil and gas and so on. But I'm saying that fortunately we've got leaders of the quality of Dr. HAGE GEINGOB, tried and tested revolutionaries. They are not people who arrived in the struggle yesterday and been with the struggle from the beginning and have stayed with it right through. It's the kind of person that we need to be able to say, all right, we're very fortunate to get these new resources, but how do we manage them so that they produce positive results? It's a very sensitive matter, but it requires a very, very principled political leadership.
very well, Mr. President. Notwithstanding the sound relations between Namibia and South Africa, there may be challenges that flare up from time to time if one has regard to the challenges around the Southern African Customs Union and also the Orange River. What do you make of those persisting challenges, and how are they, from your perspective, to be resolved in the best interest of both nations?
Well, you must bear in mind that I'm not in government. I've not been in government for many years. So on some of the details that you would want to discuss, I wouldn't know. I don't know, for instance, what the problem would be around SACO, the Customs Union, Southern African Customs Union. I don't know what problem there would be there. But for instance, with regard to the river, that's an old issue as to where the boundary is. We discussed this thing when Comrade President Sam Nujoma was president of Namibia. Discussed it when Comrade President Hifikepunye Pohamba was president. And I had thought the matter had died away because what we were saying, that's the position of the South African government at that time, I don't know now. We were saying that, you see, between Namibia and South Africa, it's not necessary to have problems around a border like this. That the Namibians have got free use of the entirety of the river, from its northern bank to its southern bank. There's no need for them to think that there is a border, that the river belongs to South Africa, and therefore there's some restriction. That they have got perfect use. If they want to use the waters of the Orange River, they by all means will do that, without going through all of this rigmarole of having to change the borders on a piece of paper. As you remember, Namibia had already done this thing in terms of the maritime border, that from the middle of the mouth of the Orange River, as it empties into the Atlantic, then they draw a line into the Atlantic, and that becomes a maritime border. So that's fine. They know no problem about that. We were saying that as far as the land border, you've got all of these complicated issues, like the OAU. There's a standard position of the OAU, of which both countries are members. And the standard position of the OAU is that, please, let us all keep the colonial boundaries. Because once we begin changing those, then there's going to be all manner of trouble. And we're saying, in our instance, the Namibians have got a perfect right to access the entirety of that river, and not to have there's no barrier. The fact that the colonial boundary was drawn at a particular point on the northern bank of the river, that's not an obstacle to an independent and a liberated South Africa, liberated Namibia. So I'm saying that at the time I left government, that was the position. And in that sense, the matter kind of died away. Nobody was raising it in the Namibian government. Nobody was raising it on the South African government. Because, if you've got free run on that river, whether you are South African or Namibian, what is the importance of a line on a map? Which then raises many questions. What do we do about the OAU decision? And then there are all of these complicated constitutional matters. This matter is part of the Constitution of South Africa. You got to have constitutional amendments, all of that. But in the end, practically, of what consequence is it? I'm saying that the position that we took then
Thank you, Mr.
concerning
President.
that river. I don't know what the position is now.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we wrap up our conversation, the Namibian nation is in mourning. Do you perhaps have a message of comfort for Namibians at this point in time?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it is indeed. I think the Namibian people naturally are in mourning, but I think a lot of us who know the late President HAGE GEINGOB also feel that sense of loss. And I'd like to say to the Namibian people that I think we need to say farewell to him, to the comrade President, Dr. HAGE GEINGOB, in a very dignified manner. And I think that in the process of all of this, we need to find a way of recalling what the positive examples that he set for all of us, the positive challenges that he left with us. You know, when HAGE kept talking about a Namibian house, to try and inspire everybody in Namibia the sense that we all belong together in one family. There are national challenges. Why don't we unite around the national challenges? We may differ about the political tactics and all of that, but I'm saying that to really reflect on the legacy that he leaves behind, because it must continue to inspire what needs to be done in terms of the continuing process of the reconstruction and development of Namibia. But certainly we are very much with them and very much with the people of Namibia. That's why we are coming to the funeral. It's also to be there also as we say farewell to him and to say to the Namibian people as a whole, really our sincere condolences. And we hope nevertheless that the historic cooperation between our peoples and our countries and our governments and so on, that cooperation must continue. But I think we have to look very closely at the example that Comrade HAGE set to inspire us to be able to do the things that need to be done. But certainly our sincere condolences to the family, Mrs. Monica Geingos, to the children, to the SWAPO party, to the government and the people of Namibia, our sincere condolences, and we will be there on Sunday. But just our presence to communicate that same message.
Nkosi, Mr. President.
Okay, Chief, thanks. But sincere condolences to you too.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
All right.
Former South African President Thabo Mbeki speaking to us about the life and legacy of the late Dr. HAGE GEINGOB.
Well, of course, there we have that's Denver Kisting speaking to former South African President Thabo Mbeki, of course, widely regarded as one of the elder statesmen on the continent when it comes to politics. It has been exactly 3 weeks, Blanche, since the nation, of course, woke up to this devastating news of the passing of Dr. HAGE GEINGOB. And, of course, a lot has happened over the last 3 weeks. We are going to be highlighting that before we start with the official burial program at 10 o'clock this morning. But for now, of course, we know that the gates are open of the Heroes Acre, and you are all welcome to head over there for the burial.
Yes, and the government has also made available transport. So the pickup has started as from 6:30. That's now at selected pickup points around the capital. So as you said, the gates are open and people can still make their way to the Heroes Acre, where that will be the final resting place of Dr. GEINGOB.
Well, of course, before we share more tributes with you and reflect back on what has been happening over the last 3 weeks, let's quickly cross over to the Independence Stadium where Salima Hanaki is standing by just to give us an update of the mood and what we can expect for the day.
Well, Ricardo, we will cross to Selima a bit later on, but I understand President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa arrived last night, as well as Princess Anne of UK, and was at Casa Rosalia to pay her condolences to the former First Lady and also sign the book of condolences. And now let's have a look at how that went and what they were discussing at Casa Rosalia. That's last night, just after the official memorial service at Independence Stadium.
Let's take a look at this. Well, of course, as you can see, they're just visuals of different tributes of world leaders being paid respects to the late head of state. We saw, of course, earlier visuals of Princess Anne, a part of the British royal family as well. Of course, also saw the Amina Mohammed, the Deputy Secretary General at the United Nations as well. Also the Prime Minister of Sao Tome and Principe. There is, of course, Patrice Trovoada also in the visuals there. Patrice Trovoada, in fact, was the last or the final official visit that the president had, and spent quite considerable amount of time catching up with the Prime Minister there as well. So him making his way to come and pay his respects. We also saw visuals there of Julian Amada Bio, who is the president of Sierra Leone, also coming there to pay his respects to the First Lady, and of course, by extension, the people of the Republic of Namibia.
Now, Ricardo, while those visits were ongoing at Casa Rosalia last night, mourners and sympathizers also remained at the Independence Stadium last night and were just viewing, because the body had to lay in state, and they were viewing the body as well as just singing and sending off Dr. GEINGOB in the true Namibian way as they described it, because we made some turns at Independence Stadium as well to view the body. So, and this is what we captured, how the mood was up until just 6 or before 6 this morning. So let's take a look. Well, those were the scenes at Independence Stadium last night, as he said, songs from the Lutheran hymn book. They said they were sending off the late Dr. GEINGOB in the true Namibian fashion, Ricardo.
In true Namibian fashion there as well. And the mourners were there all night, and that's part of the traditional practice, of course, as explained by Mr. Hans Ehab just yesterday. And as the sun is coming up this morning, of course, what is called the Toanga was the ritual gets singing, and that's the final song that group will be singing before, of course, they start with the official program as well. So that is part of course, the ritual practices overnight, throughout night. Since yesterday, after we closed off the broadcast, right, I think just around 11 o'clock in the evening.
Just about 11, yes.
They had been singing until this morning at 6 o'clock. But to find out what exactly is going down right now and what the mood and the scenes are at the stadium, we now cross over to Selima Hanok. That's ready for us. Good morning, Selima.
We are coming to you live, that is from Independence Stadium, where the body of the president, the late president, Dr. HAGE GEINGOB, laid in state. And of course, immediately after the memorial service, that was last night, the Ngukwen community sang hymns, and also just as per their tradition, and also just to do some cultural activities that they had to do in terms of their culture. So we are speaking now to Aitaman, traditional head authority. He's the headman, GEINGOB Kavango. He's just going to give us a brief of what transpired yesterday. GEINGOB, what happened last night after the memorial service?
Okay, so last night we saw how Namibians from all walks of life, predominantly from the Ngukwen, Damara community, came together here at the Independence Stadium, where, as you rightfully said, our late and beloved President, His Excellency Dr. HAGE Gottfried GEINGOB, laid in rest. And we came together as per our culture to bid farewell in the form of what we call a Arunubes, also called an Okoro Wabas. This is a vigil. According to the culture traditions of the Ngukwen Tamara people, a deceased is not left alone the night before the remains are laid to rest. And so we came together to sing hymns and praises to His Excellency the President, knowing that he was not only our President, but he was also our tribesman. So we had to come together and to give him a befitting send-off. And that's what transpired last night here at the Independence Stadium.
How will you describe the atmosphere of last night?
The atmosphere was actually a mixed feeling. Very sad on the one side, knowing that it was our final evening with our beloved President. But then also a very joyous occasion, because we had many artists that were performing. We had the general public that was performing, and also just the presence of the former First Lady, the widow, Monica Gengos, to have her here amongst us was quite a blessing for us, knowing that she had a very rough 3 weeks, and knowing that there's so much stress upon her as a person, emotional stress for that matter, and psychological. To have her amongst us was quite a blessing. So it was a mixed feeling evening, very sad on the one hand, but also very joyous on the other.
So as we prepare to go and lay the president, to his leading him to his resting place, what will you say is the legacy that he left behind, especially also just in the Ngukwen community?
Yes, first things first, His Excellency, the late President, was actually a personification of Namibia's motto. He was indeed a unifier. He was a person that stood for liberty, and that's why we see that in this country we enjoy press freedom. There are so many liberties that came to be, and also justice. Seeing that whilst he was a president, there was no manner in which the legislative arm or the executive arm had an overarm over the judiciary. And we know for a fact there are many cases whereby the president allowed the law to take its course. So he was actually a epitome of the country's motto. But coming to the Damara community, indeed, a man above others. He stood shoulder above man. He's a hero, not only for the Namibian nation, but also for the Damara people. And we are blessed that for the first time last year in the 2023 Damara Cultural Festival was actually the first time that the president, whilst being a president, attended the Damara Festival. So things took time. And we were quite anxious and we were concerned, why is the president not coming to us? But then we saw that things take time and then they happen on the right time. So that's that. He's quite a guy, a person, a loved father figure, friend, not only to the country, not only to the international community, but also in the Damara community. And this was witnessed last night when we came together for the vigil that we had. Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you so much, GEINGOB.
Thank you.
All right. Of course, that was GEINGOB Kavango. He just gave us a brief of the activities that took place yesterday, immediately after the memorial service. And of course, people are still coming to view the body of the late president. And immediately after that, there will be a procession that will be leading to Heroes Eka, where the president will be laid to rest. So we'll be bringing you more of that updates. But for now, back to you in the studio.
Being happening right now from the Independence Stadium. Of course, like I mentioned a bit earlier on, there's Selima Henok speaking to Chief Kavango, one of the chiefs from the Ngukwen community, of course, just reflecting on what took place over the evening in terms of the singing, the significance of the songs that were sung, and how it was closed off. Of course, the last song was sang just before the sun comes up, and that one is referred to, of course, as the GEINGOB. And immediately after that, it's complete silence and time to get ready for the burial. And those are, of course, the visuals that you saw from the Independence Stadium. Now, of course, looking at what is happening at the Independence Stadium as well, and I've been covering the event, not only, of course, the event yesterday and the procession, but the tribute over the last 3 weeks. It has been a daunting task, of course, for the team here at the Namibia Broadcasting Corporation as well. We've got the Director General of the NBC joining us this morning just to reflect on the work so far and what we can look forward to for the rest of the day, and perhaps, of course, also after the funeral is done, more importantly, how do we continue to maintain the legacy of President HAGE GEINGOB? A very good morning to you, and thank you so much, Mr. Similo, for making time out to join us.
Yes, good morning, Ricardo, and also good morning to our viewers.
Well, we're just taking a step back a little bit earlier on this morning and just reflecting on how the news, of course, came to Blanche. She was the one that facilitated the announcement of the head of state, of course, on your instruction as well. But let's just take a step back on that fateful day, just to take us through, you know, what goes on when news like that comes in, particularly at the hour that it did. Of course, we don't have 24 hours where staff are in the studio, etc., etc. But just take us through that day and that announcement.
Yeah, maybe, Ricardo, before I start with that, let me just once again thank the NBC staff for total commitment. Total commitment. It's been 3 weeks of doing what we've never done before, almost like going into uncharted grounds in terms of where we are. And here I would want to refer from the securities at our gates to the cleaners, to literally everybody, because even just the studios to look great, you need people to do that, up to the level of those that are in the technical area of making things happen, the support staff and all of that. And then secondly as well, MICT, because we've also been making use of their crews across the country as well. And then of course there's an element of NMH also working together with us. But importantly, the military. Without the military, we would not be there. Remember, this is their event, and they've been very, very, very helpful. And then, of course, the people of Namibia, and then people like yourself who are at the front, who are the face of what NBC is, particularly for the past 3 days here. Now, reflecting on the day itself, look, when I got the call, I don't know what I felt. It was like, it's not real. And I just reconfirmed, is it? Is it really? And then the immediate thing I did was to call my ED. I spoke to him, and then I called my minister. I spoke to him, and I also called our deputy minister so that they are just aligned. And then I think Tate Namanje was also assisting the family, so I had a chat with him as well, and I also had a chat with the current president. So we had to work out now what needed to be done.
So there had to be sort of a consensus, a meeting of the mind in terms of
how
the
we
next
should
step.
go
How
with
do
this
we
year.
go about it?
Yeah, and then at that time the crew was relatively small. As you know, it's weekend, and weekends we scale down.
Particularly, I think it's the most silent day out of the 7 days.
All days.
Of all days, yeah.
So we had Blanche, I think Mr. Stephen Kotze, and then Mr. Karipi at our final control. So they started putting together a loop that sought to make sure that we get on air, we do things. But the beautiful thing, Ricardo, was that once it became known, we did not have to go and look for people. People just came themselves. Radio was up. The teams came, where can I help, what can I do? And long before we knew, we had a fully fledged team running all the way.
Because I remember there was a saying for me as well, and I think it's the natural reaction. The moment the news came, I think I also texted, I think it was Mr. Denk and Sophia to say, I'm ready. We can go anytime.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that was the conversation initially. I think also speaking to KZ as well, very, very early in the morning, to say, okay, how are we moving on this thing? The news came out, and I think when you're saying now that you didn't have to look for people once the news came out, again, just a testimony of the Namibian spirit and that commitment.
That commitment. And then from there, the next day, the Monday, I created like a war room type of setup. And then on the double was meeting, talking, and we said, I gave direction to say, colleagues, this one is something that we also don't know how to handle, but look, here's the thing. Change the grids, change the schedules, we accommodate. We worked out plans, both radio, TV, and online, and then we started running from there. And in the process, as we were moving, it was almost like the pieces of the puzzle were actually getting to, fitting by themselves. But I must say, it took a lot of work. But as I said about, I think, three weeks ago, the planning of running one of the channels as a current affairs was that we would have commenced in April. Hence I said that the death of our late president, in a way, forced us and catapulted us into the process where we are today. And it's really, it's been working well. Long hours for many of the colleagues, so we will have to tweak a thing, one or two here and here, there. Last Friday, I left here at about 5-ish or so. So I went to sit at some space just to drink a cold drink. I'm from the Oros Club. So as I was seated there, a friend came and he asked me, DG, are you ready? And then I was like, why is this guy asking me, am I ready? And I started almost doubting myself. But I said to myself, no, but this is what we do. I said, no, we are ready for the weekend. We'll take it on the chin and we will make it happen. And today, I'm a very proud Director General, a very proud Namibian, because you guys and the rest of the team, you really lived up to what it was.
There's, of course, also that responsibility to the rest of the continent, because we are the primary broadcaster. There's a certain responsibility as a public broadcaster to provide access to the rest of the continent. Just reflect on that, the access for the rest of the continent and the rest of the world. Yeah,
that one for us, we had to negotiate with MultiChoice, given that they have a footprint that extends up to about Nigeria. So I contacted Mr. Gertze, the managing director for MultiChoice Namibia, and I said, look, this is what we are having. We would want to spread our signal because the interest from a Southern African Broadcasters Association is there. How do we do this? And then he said, no, they will assist. But then issues of quality, we had that discussion as well. Remember, our output on their end was standard definition, which is HD, which is SD. Yeah. And then I said to him, but there's a condition. That condition is that you need to boost the signal to be HD, which is high definition. Otherwise, a bad impression will be created about what our image looked like. And they accepted that. And then we started doing testing, and it worked well. But then now we have those that are not necessarily on the DSTV bouquet of channels. So for that, we created a special connectivity. And linked to that as well, we uploaded the programs also on YouTube for those that will be struggling in connecting. So for now, things have been working well. I only had a little bit of a scare yesterday. There was a moment of between, I think, 15, 20 seconds where we went off air because at the stadium, someone came and unplugged our uplink connectivity. But luckily for us, we brought in a gadget from South Africa that would serve as a redundancy. So when that happened...
The insurance policy had to kick in quickly.
The colleagues just switched over and we were back on air. And this is where I realized that, you know what, when people say take out insurance,
take it out.
You must do it. Just imagine now if we had not had that, because the problem of trying to find where the potential problem could be would take us a bit of time. And that would have frustrated millions of people.
And of course, in television, time, 1, 2, 3 seconds is already too long.
Yes,
it's already too long.
Yes.
In terms of this, of course, one of the things that I know that you're very passionate about is creating connection and access for the grassroots level for communities to understand and get information in their languages. The radio services have been instrumental in that. You had made a very, very strong and assertive commitment to make sure that they are also running at the same pace with television as well. Just reflect on a little bit on the importance of it.
100%. And in our discussions almost daily since the passing, it was like radio, television, and online, everybody should be there. So what we've been doing is that for Touch FM, which is the youth station, which is English, and National FM, it's relatively okay. It dovetails easier with what you do. But for all other language services that are in vernacular, we there said that, look, get our presenters, get a resource person who understands the politics, who can speak about the late, and then you do your interpretation in the language that the listeners are getting to. And that has also worked extremely, extremely well, because I got calls about people who are staying on farms who only have access to radio, appreciating what has been happening. So for us, I believe we've done the best that we can. It was a matter of, we were also not too sure how to tackle this thing, but as it was evolving on a daily basis, we started seeing how to put everything into place as well. And then, of course, from a resource perspective, we've also seen the things that we need, that we may not have.
And that was going to be my next question in terms of the resources, because many people don't know. I mean, I think there were 2 or 3 pictures that was shared behind the scenes, and there were about 28, 30 cameras being, organized and being set up. Just talk to us about the resource requirement and, the additional staff and resources that needed to come in.
Yeah, let me start with the one which is hilarious. Someone was saying, oh, this NBC, so they know these things. Why were they hiding the cameras? Now, the thing is, in terms of broadcast, in order for you to be able to have high definition quality on your TV, it's the same. Like now, even if we or any other channel is broadcasting in high definition, but your TV at home is not attuned to that, you will not get that quality. Now, within broadcasting, it's a whole chain. It starts with a camera that records, and then there's a loop feeding into broadcast, final control, final termination, up to uplink, and then transmitters getting on, and then reaching your home. So if that stream as a process getting to the final picture that gets to your house, if it is also not fully attuned to be high definition, then nothing can happen. Because you can have everything here. You can have all those cameras, but if your system that is transmitting is not there, that creates a problem. What we did, Ricardo, late last year, I think Blanche did an interview. I did inform the nation that NBC 1 and 2 are actually high definition. But whether people believed us or not, I don't know. But the events of the past 3 weeks have forced Namibians now to be attuned with NBC, radio, TV, and online. In fact, I had someone saying they've never watched NBC this much. And the same person the next day calls me, which was yesterday, says that, so my TV license fee that I've been paying, I feel I'm getting the value out of that. And my remark was simple. It's to say that sometimes we will give a view over what things are based on what people are saying. So until you go in and experience it yourself, you will not know. This is what we do on a daily basis. This is our job. This is our lives. It's a way of life for us. So the challenge now is that comes next week, we can't go back. We have to keep the momentum. We have to be that news and current affairs entity that can actually keep the things going. So from our end, I believe we've done a great deal of good, and we hope that as NBC we've been able to portray and allow Namibians to be part of a process in terms of the whole process of getting to where we are today, which is the actual burial ceremony. So, and I'm tempted to believe that we've succeeded in that.
The thing, of course, is also going forward in terms of the programming. What are we looking at going forward once the burial is done in terms of maintaining sort of the legacy and continuing with some of the conversations?
Naturally, these conversations will go ahead, but you must also know that even within the transition, there's changes that came in politically in terms of where and what Namibia should be. So as an NBC now, we will have to think about how do we reflect everything, because at the base, at the core, what we must create is harmony within all of us. So we will just do what we know best, but one thing that we will be doing, particularly from a television perspective, we already have Good Morning Namibia, which runs from 6 to 9 live. So the block now from 9 to 1 will also have to have current sort of
content,
happenings within it, and then between 1 and 2 it's already taken care of, because we have the news and then it's Iron Sadek. And then from 2 up to 6 we are also relatively safe there, because already from 6 Nina's show starts, and then from there it's the live discussion programs then leading us into the news. So in terms of where we are would be to see how do we mobilize resources, and hopefully our minister and the Minister of Finance, and then also the Director General of National Planning of Namibia, I'm hoping that they are listening, because currently there's a request on the table of the Minister of Finance. If we get that, yes, already within the next 3 to 4 months, there will be major improvements in terms of what we will be having on the table. Yeah, but all in all, Ricardo, I just need to go back again and really just thank the NBC staff for commitment, going beyond the call of duty. That's all I can ask it, because our last meeting, by the way, finished last night at about 1:30, and we were planning for this morning already.
And we had to be on air at 6.
Yes, and as the person who must give hope to the staff, I was party to that as well, discussing, quickly reflecting, and then saying, how do we start the day, even though we know that we had our plans, as you know.
And I think for many people, obviously, they're seeing you in a suit here. They don't know that the last 2 days you were up and down here in a T-shirt.
Hey, I tell you, but this is what we do. This is our life. It's our 100%. Way of life, and we like and we love what we're doing. And for the warmth that we've been receiving, we don't take that for granted.
Thank you very much, Comrade DG, for making time out to just come and reflect on the coverage and provide that confidence to the nation.
Always a pleasure, Ricardo. Thank you very, very much.
Director General of the Namibia Broadcasting Corporation, Stanley Similo, of course, reflecting on the beginning, how they had to bring the news to the nation at 3 o'clock in the morning. That is, of course, on a Sunday morning. And somebody was saying last night, one of my nieces, that the president, even in his passing, still has jokes. How does he have his burial on the one day that most things are prohibited? Stay with us. We'll be back after the break. Of course, there you can see the visuals from the procession that took place on Friday. Was the body of the late Dr. HAGE GEINGOB to be viewed by the nation. That was around Soweto Market in Independence Avenue at that very moment where it was moving to. Of course, it started initially from the State House around 12:15 on Friday. That's with the procession being led by the Chief of the Defense Force alongside the President as well as the Chief Mourner or the Mourner-in-Chief. And starting off first with the Young Younger Street, headed to David Hosea Miroro Street, in Hockland Park, and continuing turning into right in Hockland Park to Dorado Park with Hendrik Vetboy Street. After that, of course, Moses Tarweb into Komasdal, and then Ochimise with Winnie Madikizela Mandela Road. Immediately after that, of course, coming into Independence Avenue, and then finishing at Casa Rosalia for 4 hours, where the family had their intimate gathering on Friday.
Yes, and indeed it was an intimate and somber gathering, Ricardo, where the family members that we also reported on, or them actually telling us that the family tree spreads across the maize triangle, starting from Oshiwarongo to Otavi to Ocho and also Tsumeb, and then as well as towns such as Arandes and Korijas and so on. That's now the GEINGOB family tree that's spreading across, and all of them, especially the elderly, were present at Casa Rosalia alongside the widow and the children to receive the remains and have their intimate moments with the late Dr. GEINGOB before handing over the body to the state. That's actually also another traditional manner in which the handing over of the body is being done in the Damara or the Ngukwe culture. So them also just giving thanks to the state for according the highest honor to Dr. GEINGOB as the commander-in-chief. But what was so heartwarming, Ricardo, is that Namibians coming out, as your niece later also said last night about the president's burial taking place on the day of on the day that most activities are prohibited. Someone also mentioned on Friday during the procession, or as they were watching the procession on NBC, that even in his death, he is still sticking to his mantra of no Namibian should feel left out, and that is what the army or the military made sure for them to have a glimpse